Alright, first of all, everyone, I want to share with y'all my many thanks for continuing to join me on this little adventure of Umineko. And in this particular part of the video, guys, we're pretty much doing some sleuthing right now because we're trying to understand what's going on, why it's happening, how it happened, and who the culprit really is. And it's still hard to figure out, but we're getting there. And there's some things that's going to happen here that will disturb you, but we'll see how it goes in due time. But with all that said, hope you all continue to enjoy. Thank you all for the love and support. Let's get right back onto it. Alright everyone, welcome back again to some more Umineko. Let's get started. After those words from Auntie Ava, I stopped talking to him. Misplaced words of comfort might actually hurt him. Jessica sat down next to Aniki and quietly put an arm around him. Maybe only Jessica, who had known about Aniki and Shannon's love since the beginning, and who had been discussing that relationship with Shannon, could comfort Aniki now. I went over to Auntie Ava and sat down on the opposite sofa.
バトラ君は強いわね。もうだいぶしっかりしているように見えるわよ。
まあ、ほら、愛の深さが傷の深さじゃないですか。
That's a very deep quote too. Depth of the wound, depth of the love.
俺は別にあんなクソ親父同志の方が知ったことじゃないし、キリエさんは気の毒ですが、まあ本当の親ってわけじゃないですしね。
あら、という割にはさっきすっごく大泣きしてたわよ。
まあ育ての親に対する恩はあのくらい泣けば OK かと思いまして。
そのあたりの切り替えの速さやドライなあたりは本当にルドルフ譲りね。あの子は昔から激しく喜んだり悲しんだり怒ったりしたけれど、すぐにケロリと平静を取り戻したわ。
そんなことはないっすよ。
That look he has right now, he looks like Rudolph.
俺だってまだまだ心のショックから立ち直れちゃいません。ただ俺がみんなと違うのは、それによってどういう感情が生み出されるかってことだと思います。
どういうこと？
I was acting much calmer than George, Aniki, and Jessica were. That wasn't because my sadness was less intense and I'd already sprung back to normal. It was because my sadness had been gradually replaced by a different emotion.
悲しいっていうよりは、どこのドイツがこんなことをしやがったのか。横っ面に一発お見舞いしてやらないことには腹の虫が収まらねえんです。
That was what I really wanted to do. It was like I couldn't allow myself to just sit here, overwhelmed with sadness and hugging my knees.
親父たちが殺されて以降、この島は台風に包まれたままです。つまりこれだけの上等を決めてくれやがった野郎はまだこの島の中にいるってことです。
そういうことになるわね。今も暗い森のどこかに身を潜めているのかしら。
I felt like I had a very similar conversation with Kirie-san the night before. That's right. After the letter from the person who claimed to be Beatrice appeared at the dinner table last night, we had talked about whether or not a 19th person actually exists.
エヴァおばさん、この殺人、昨夜のベアトリーチェの手紙と何か関連があるんでしょうかね。
ああ、例の？
See, Ava here is a little too calm too. Like it's honestly odd. Like I don't know if I should suspect her, but I feel like she's just as surprised as everyone else that even her siblings passed on or were murdered, for that matter. Not passed on, they were murdered.
さあ、どうかしらね。
And I actually do appreciate how her attitude or her mood changes when she's with her her nephew, especially with Battler, because she is so mean to Natsuhi. Like at the very least, I'm glad she cares about the kids.
あの手紙はお父様が遺産問題に絡みたくて出した怪文書という見方で兄弟は一致したんだけれども、それと今朝の事件に関係があるかは今の段階では分かりかねるわね。
あの手紙、本当にベアトリーチェなんて魔女がマリアに渡したんすかね？
まさか。全部お父様の仕組んだ茶番でしょ。シャノンちゃんあたりに肖像画のドレスを着させてマリアちゃんを騙したんでしょ。お父様らしい手の込みすぎたいたずらだと思うけど。
ゆうべキリエさんとベアトリーチェは実在するんだろうかって話をしたんすけど、キリエさんも俺たち18人の中にベアトリーチェがいるだろうと言ってましたね。
そんなの当然じゃない。この島には私たちしかいないのよ。なら私たちの中の誰かがベアトリーチェを語ったに決まってるじゃない。
この島には俺たち以外はいないすか？
That doesn't necessarily explain the sigils on the doors and the shutters of the places where the shutters, especially in that storeroom where everyone was killed, and the sigil that was placed on Natsuhi's door. Again, it could just be a decoration just to scare people. But with this visual novel, I honestly feel like it's more supernatural than it is someone amongst them that killed. I mean, don't get me wrong. I still feel like one of these people were involved in helping and aiding the murder, but I'm fairly certain, because we're gonna see her eventually, Beatrice is really in existence. She's alive. We just won't know. We just don't know when she'll show up.
当然でしょ。私たち以外の誰がここにいるっていうの？この島には私たちしかいない。18人しかいない。
There might be 19.
ならベアトリーチェを語るのも18人の中の誰かしかいないじゃない。
Kirie-san had denied that there was a 19th person by flipping over the chessboard. Even though Auntie Ava hadn't constructed an argument that complicated, her opinion at least was the same. Except, if that is the case, our situation starts to look very ugly. At the time of Beatrice's letter, we were able to dismiss the matter as just someone's prank. However, if we deny the existence of the 19th person at this point, matters are not so jovial. In other words,
19人目がいないなら、親父たちを殺した犯人も18人の中にいるってことになっちまうじゃないですか。つまり、今この屋敷にいる誰かが殺したってことになる。
Auntie Ava smiled meaningfully. It looked like Auntie thought that this conclusion should have been obvious from the very beginning.
犯人は倉庫の中に6人の遺体を運び込んだわ。でもよく倉庫の中に運び込めたわよね。あのシャッターは常に閉められていて施錠されていたそうよ。つまり倉庫内に運び込むにはシャッターの施錠を開ける必要があった。わかる？
たまたまその日シャッターが開けっぱなしになってた可能性は？
使用人たちは常に閉めていると言ってたわ。つまり鍵を使用人室から持ち出さなくては倉庫は絶対に開けられない。
鍵は使用人室の一つしかないんすかね？
源氏さんはそうだと言ってるわ。ということは犯人はそのたった一つの倉庫の鍵のありかを知っていて持ち出した。さっきカノン君が使用人室に鍵を戻すところを見たわ。壁にびっしりと鍵がかけられていて、とても素人にはどこに何がかけてあるのかわからなかった。犯人はその中から倉庫の鍵を見事選び出したのよ。しかも札も何もついていない鍵を手にしてバラ庭園裏にある倉庫の鍵だと理解した。
That still could have just easily been Beatrice because she's very familiar with the Ushiromiya household.
ついでに言うと倉庫の場所すら理解していた。もっとはっきり断言するわ。犯人は使用人室の内部にも熟知している。
Her argument was extremely plain and clear. If the bodies had been thrown somewhere in the bushes of the rose garden, no explanation would have been necessary. However, the one key to the storehouse was in the servant room, and stored with a large group of other keys, such that a novice would not be able to tell them apart. This meant that the culprit was someone who was used to going in and out of the servant room and knew well where the key was. The family didn't normally go into the servant room, which meant that...
ってことは使用人の誰かが犯人。
悪いけど それ以上はおばさんも言えないわよ。でも一つだけ教えられることがあるわ。
なんすか？
犯人たちは複数で、そして十分な武装をしていたと考えられるわ。だってそうでしょ。食堂にいた兄さんたち4人を一度に襲って殺し、合計6人分の遺体をようようとバラ庭園の向こうの倉庫まで運んで、悪趣味な化粧と落書きを施している。これだけのことを単独犯で行えるはずもないでしょう。
It was impossible. It might not have been if a single person spent enough time on it, but that would have taken ages. It was probably best to think that a significant number of people have been a part of it.
ひゅー。ってことは、エヴァおばさんは使用人の人たちがみんなグルだろって言ってんすか？
静かになさいな。憶測で言っちゃ悪いわよ。それにもし本当にそうだったらどうするつもり？彼らは私たちを生かして返さないでしょうね。しかも兄さんたち4人をやすやすと殺した相手なのよ。
See, now here's my other thing. Her argument seems to be directing all the blame towards the servants. Like she's really trying hard to make it so that it points to them. And I feel like because of that, she might be a suspect. I'm not certain yet, but she's really calm too. It's so odd.
今この部屋に残っていてまともに戦えそうな人間はうちの家族の3人にせいぜいバトラ君で4人ってところ。状況は昨晩と何も変わらない。つまり犯人にとって残る私たちを皆殺しにするなんて簡単なことなのよ。
I've been playing detective with Auntie Ava out of a desire to expose the person who had killed Dad and the rest before the police did. If I could manage to skillfully penetrate the culprit's identity, I wanted to stick the evidence in their face. I had gotten into my head that if I did that, the culprit would give up and surrender, just like in one of those detective movies. However, the culprit only surrenders there because they're in a situation where resisting would be futile. The culprits behind these incidents on the island were far from helpless, and might even be able to massacre all of the remaining people on the island. And on top of that, the island was like a giant locked room, cut off from the outside world by the typhoon. So they had the full day until tomorrow to kill, scheme, and cover up their handiwork. In short, we weren't in the kind of safe atmosphere where we could entertain ourselves by playing detective. On the contrary, we were at a stage where we had to be scared stiff, since playing detective might displease the culprits and cause them to repeat another mass murder.
あくまでも可能性の問題よ。
It's a possibility to which you're leaning very strongly towards, though.
でも私は使用人の人たちをまだ信用できないわね。それに私は使用人だけを疑ってるわけじゃないわ。さらに黒幕がいるかもしれないと思ってるわよ。
黒幕？どうしてですか？
勘よ。使用人は書いて字のごとし、誰かに使用されて手足となる存在よ。殺されたのは後宮家の親族ばかり。なら、その結果で利害が発生する人間が関わるのは当然。
This was also plain and clear. The Ushiro-miya family were currently right in the middle of discussing how to distribute the inheritance if grandfather died. If this followed the formulaic plot used to death by many classic mystery novels, it would definitely be a crime by someone with ties to the Ushiro-miya family and who was entangled in the inheritance problem. Auntie had probably also read a few books in that genre. Her theory did have a few one-sided conclusions to it, but it was a run-of-the-mill idea that anyone would surely hit upon. I think anyone would have suspected the servants even if their logic was different. Especially the talk revolving around the key to the shutter. That was enough to make it easy to suspect strongly that one of the servants was involved in the case.
だから、なぜか気に入らねえんすよね。
気に入らないって？ 何の話？
あ、いやいや、こっちの話っす。
I dodged the question by joking, but I couldn't wipe out the sense of unease I felt inside me. Because the reasoning we had arrived at was altogether too simple. Reasoning that anyone could arrive at. And I just couldn't accept that. If I tried flipping over the chessboard like I had learned from Kirie-san, that was exactly why it was impossible for the servants to be the culprits. If the servants really had been the culprits, they wouldn't have hidden the bodies in a place that was tied to themselves. Certainly not the Rose Garden storehouse of all places, whose key they themselves controlled. The police would probably immediately pursue whoever had been in control of the key. That would create a danger for exposure. If we were to assume that they were the culprits, they had no reason to carry the bodies into the storehouse. Did they expect us to think that, and so put them in the storehouse deliberately? No, that definitely didn't make sense. When the police come and inspect the site, all kinds of things will probably become clear. No matter how deeply careful the culprits were in carrying out murders, some kind of traces will definitely be found. So, in summary, they have everything to lose and nothing to gain. If you think about it this way, and look at the game from the culprit's side, it feels like there's no point in advertising the location of the corpses. If the bodies are found, a report would be sent to the police. The remaining people would become more cautious. They could start looking for who was responsible. Anyway, none of these things would make the culprits feel any more comfortable. Just like the words of the main character's mother in a novel I read recently called Higurashi no Nakukoro ni. Oh my gosh. Let me repeat that one more time. Higurashi no Nakukoro ni. Okay, yep, that's funny because they're bringing up the spin-off of this game based on it, because it was also a Higurashi game. That's funny. Nice Easter egg. A mystery story has 4 parts: introduction, development, turn, and conclusion. And so to commit the perfect crime, it is essential to eliminate the introduction. Right now, no one knew where Grandfather was. We didn't know whether he had already become a victim, or if he was one of the culprits. But this state of confusion had to be beneficial to whoever did this. By blatantly advertising the bodies to us, and declaring, hey, there's a murder case going on, the culprit had absolutely nothing to gain. Right, that was where we could flip over the chessboard. So this blatant advertisement of bodies was itself the culprit's goal. So, it may well be that to the culprit, having the 6 corpses be present there meant more than the deaths themselves. In other words, the culprit wanted to display these murders. To who? To us. It was a message. The culprit was trying to shove something in our faces. I didn't know what that could be. At the current time, none of us could grasp anything from this vulgar mass murder except malice. Malice towards everyone, perhaps. You know, I gotta say, Battler has a good head on his shoulders if he's thinking like this right now. Like, a lot of people don't take him seriously and think he's pretty much a dunce, you know, as a joking manner because of how he acts around others. But from what we've read thus far, he's a pretty smart dude. He's analyzing all the events occurring as we speak, and it's interesting how his mind works. Each one of the survivors had some kind of connection to one of the 6 who had been killed. Uncle Krause's death brought sorrow to Jessica's family. The deaths of Dad and Kirie-san brought sorrow to me, while Auntie Rosa's death brought sorrow to Maria. Goda-san's death probably dealt a shock to his fellow servants, and Shannon-chan's death brought grief to George Aniki, who had proposed to her, and to Kanon-kun, who had loved her like an older sister. Everyone now on this island had received an equal amount of sadness. Auntie Ava had claimed that the servants were definitely in cahoots. But then how could you explain the deaths of Goda-san and Shannon-chan? And by this argument, the grief caused by the 6 deaths hit everyone but Auntie Ava and Uncle Hideyoshi. It was very possible to doubt Auntie Ava herself, who was acting like she was outside the net of suspicion and who might have been trying to point that suspicion at the servants. Boom, baby! That's what I was just saying! In the first place, she had managed to avoid suspicion and place it on the servants with that argument about the key to the shutter. But if you looked at it from a perspective of motive, but who would gain something from the murders, Auntie Ava's name floated to the top of the list. I told you! I knew it! She was steering the blame in the servant's direction, but we're still not certain.
バトラ君が何を考えてるか、おばさんわかるわよ。
嫌だな。内緒にしててくださいよ。あんなことやこんなことで頭をいっぱいにしてたなんて。
私がこの殺人で一番得をする。どうせ疑われるだろうから、先に自己申告しておくわ。
I tried to dodge this conversation by joking around, but it looked like it hadn't worked.
遺産は兄弟の数で分割する。でも今や4兄弟は私一人。後宮家の全財産はすべて私のものになるの。
秀吉おじさんが聞いたら、予算か言えばシャレにならんっていうところっすね。
ごめんね。どう取り繕ったってどうせ疑われるだろうから、ふざけただけよ。だからこの殺人は、私の立場から見れば、私を疑わせるためのものではないかと思ってるの。
And now she's trying to cast doubt on us so that we wouldn't suspect her, because now she's gonna make herself come off like a victim by putting like what she's saying right now. She's pinning it on the fact that the murder occurred like this so that to make everyone else think it was her.
困ったことに、昨べのアリバイは弱いわ。
聞かせてもらってもいいっすか？
Yes, could you please tell us what you were doing?
昨べのことを。
バトラ君たちも知っている通り、兄弟が遺産をどう食いちぎり合うかという話し合いは深夜まで続いたわ。でも何時まで続いたかは知らない。私と主人は朝が早かったからね。もう眠くて24時を過ぎたあたりで抜けさせてもらったの。
It especially doesn't help when Ava uses this tone of hers.
そしてゲストハウスに戻って休んだわ。
それを秀吉おじさん以外の誰かに証明できるっすか？いやいや、別にエヴァおばさんを疑ってるわけじゃないっすよ。
あら、どうだか。証明になるかわからないけれど、ゲストハウスに戻ってきたとき、源氏さんに出迎えを受けてタオルはいるかと聞かれたわ。だから私たちがゲストハウスに戻ってきた時間は24時過ぎだと証明してくれると思うわよ。もっとも、私の仮説通り、使用人たちもグルなのだとしたら、こんなのアリバイにならないけどね。
確かにそうっすね。ってことは、俺、今、真犯人と推理ごっこをしてるってことになるんすか？
でも私の名誉のために言わせてもらうけど、遺産目当てだったなら、こんな変な殺人はしないわよ。だって、遺産相続権を喪失させるだけなら、どんな死に方だって構わない。むしろ事故死に見せかけた方がスマートでしょ？使用人たちを抱き込んで周到に計画していたなら、なおさらそうするでしょうよ。
She's been thinking about this a lot, hasn't she?
確かに、そうっすね。営利で人を殺すなら、それは常に殺人に見せるべきではない。
そういうことよ。だからおばさんは今からとてもブルーな気持ちなわけ。警察には黒幕扱いされて散々調べられるでしょうね。やだやだ。
Auntie Ava shrugged with a bitter smile. Just like it was easy to think of the servants as suspicious, it was also very easy to think of Auntie Ava as suspicious. So, if you flip over the chessboard, did that mean it was impossible for the culprit to be the... Sorry about that, guys. Hold on a second. So if we flip over the chessboard, did that mean it was impossible for the culprit to be the easily doubtable Auntie Ava? However, if that logic could pass so easily, then motive wouldn't count for anything. No, that can't be right. Knowing the motive should be a big clue towards knowing the culprit. That is why murderers throughout history have tried to ensure their motive will not be found out by skillfully complicating the incidents. I don't know. I don't know. Every time I flip over the chessboard, it keeps flipping from the front to back and back to front. Were my thoughts closing in on the truth? Or... Auntie Ava didn't want to talk any more than that, so I headed to the window, folding my arms so that I could cool my head a little. As I looked over the parlor, I saw George, Anaki, and the others gathered, talking. It looked like they were talking about the magic circle that had been painted onto the shutter. As Uncle Hideyoshi thought back to that time, he started drawing the shape in the margins of Maria's notebook. Yes, Maria is second only to grandfather in knowledge of the occult, so she might understand what it meant.
多分こんな感じだったと思うで。十字架をアレンジしたみたいなマークが書かれとったんや。そしてこんな感じで外周の円を取り囲むように妙な文字がびっしり書き込まれていて、十字架の上下左右の辺とその四隅にも何か書かれていたんや。アルファベットとかそういうのとちゃうで。あれはよく言う古代文字とかいうやつや。
あと、円周部の頂点に小さなマークがありましたな。小さな丸を5つ十字状に並べ、それぞれを直線で結んだようなマークでした。
ああ、確かにそんなのも書いてあったで。図形的には間違いなくこれや。細かい文字はわからんが、配列はほぼ同じや。
Everyone was staring down at the shape, so I stared down at it too. From what I had heard, this had been painted on the shutter to the storehouse with some material that looked like blood. I see, this sure is unsettling.
こんなわけのわかんねえもんを書きたがるのは、じいさまだけだろ。まったく、どこに行っちまったんだ。とっ捕まえて意味を聞き出してやりたいぜ。
Jessica's voice contained impatience and anger. She hadn't gone so far as to say that grandfather was the culprit, but it looked as though she thought that grandfather definitely knew the culprit's identity. Certainly, if you asked around for the link that bound the Ushiromiya family and the occult together, 10 out of 10 people would name grandfather. And to a person who knew nothing of the occult, this strange mark would have no meaning. Which meant that this might have been something addressed to grandfather. That's right. The reason to advertise the crime is to show it off to the survivors. In that case, where had grandfather, as the essential recipient of this message, disappeared off to?
こんな図形に何か心当たりはあるかい？
Maria looked at the shape with a serious face. Maybe she was enthusiastic since this was her area of expertise. However, her appearance was that of someone separated from the event at hand. As though this thing hadn't been drawn on the shutter closed around her mother's corpse.
僕の第一印象では、どこか外国の十字章に似たデザインだなって思ったかな。
ああ。確かにこんなデザインや。ということはどこぞの国と何か関係があるんか？
その国の十字章はもともと聖地巡礼者を守るための騎士修道士たちの紋章だったそうですな。
つまり、この魔法陣には宗教的な意味があるってことかよ。ますますにちんぷんかんぷんだぜ。
When I looked over at all of them, preparing to jump into the discussion, something shocked me. Maria was grinning, an eerie expression on her face that defied description. Why is the face like that? A sort of grin almost like she was making fun of everyone's ignorance. It was an expression that I wouldn't ever have believed Maria to be capable of making. And then, she laughed. An eerie, jarring laugh. Even though I was looking at it right in front of my eyes, I really didn't want to accept it as real. Oh! Oh dear, oh my gosh, no. No, 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 no. Okay.
全然違うよみんな。
Okay, I am creeped out now. Good job, game. Good job. If anything, guys, I'm gonna have to end the video here for today. Thank you all for watching. When we come back, we're gonna get to the bottom of this whole ordeal and what on earth is going on with our good cousin Maria. Thank you all for watching. Until the next one.